Switch off. Okay. Yes. Okay. What about, oh, I'm sorry. What about Lina Ricci? Do you know anything about her? Have you ever heard her name before? So and so. I see someone shaking their head like this, like maybe a little bit, but not that much. Never, no one. Okay. Why? Because she is actually one of those people that really actually made fashion and the history of fashion. And still nowadays, the company exists, and it really is among the very well-known, also in the perfume industry, that have made things that have really changed, let's say, the scenario. But let's go and see who this lady was. You can tell that the name that the lady was an Italian. And actually, Maria Agnelli Ricci, she was born in Turin, and when she was very young, she moved to Monte Carlo, and that's where she started her actually career. And her father was an Italian. It was a ribbon maker, and he developed the business, but he found out because the little girl, you know, when she was a very little girl, she started to make coats for her dolls. And so they found out that she was really, she had really a gift. And so they decided to send her, also because her father died when she was very young. As I told you, she was like 12 years old, something like that. So that was the thing that actually triggered her future, because she was sent to the apprenticeship. And so she was only 13 years old when she started to be the apprentice to a dressmaker. And she was, as I told you, extremely gifted. And being so extremely gifted, she by the age of 18 was already heading an atelier in Paris. It was not her own, but she was the head of this atelier, a very well-known atelier, which name was Raffin, and it was one of the best fashion houses of the time. And she was, by 22, the chief designer at Raffin. So she had made a career already. And she stayed at Raffin for a long time, actually until 1932, when she opened her own brand. She is regarded in a very special way. Actually, she herself regarded design as a series of problems to be solved. Actually, it was easy. She would say so, you know, that nothing could be not solved, and she would solve the problem of the design issue. She was very, as you can tell by the picture that you see, she was very feminine. She was very elegant, and this is her style. This was the style of designing that she used to do. Also, she was the one that actually made the clothes just, you know, with the fabrics in her hand, not even designing, but just turning around the model. And she would shape the dress around the model. And it was at that time, there were only two people that would do so. One was her, and the other one was Alix Grèce. And she was known with a nickname, which was la sculptrice de la mode. So the sculptress of fashion, the one that would shape, you know, fashion like you would shape a statue. So as I told you, she remained for a long time at Raffin for over 20 years. She became a partner. Actually, there was the Raffin name and Nina Ricci by the side. So the two names were one by the other. But what happened was that actually she had married um, this gentleman, this Italian man, Luigi Ricci, and he was a jeweler. But it was a very unfortunate marriage because he died after a very short while, but not before they had a kid. And this kid's name was Robert Ricci. Why? When he grew, I mean, the two of them were, one for the other because she was absolutely in love with her son. And when he was 27 years old, he studied to be in advertising. So when he was 27, he said to his mother, it's about time for you to have your own brand. So she launched, with the help of Robert, the Nina Ricci brand. And yes, here, okay, you see here the two of them in a, okay, he was not 27 in the picture, as you can tell. So they joined forces and they opened this atelier. It was just one little single room in the Boulevard des Capucines in Paris. And she would produce the garments, and Robert was in charge of running the promotion of the business and the business actually itself. So she would make the things and he would make them happen. So actually, one specific feature of this house is the fact of being a family business. Something that also in the 80s, we will notice that works very well for the Italian brands. I can mention Fendi Sister. I can mention to you Missoni. You must know that this year is the 100th anniversary of the birth of Ottavio Missoni. And it happened with Versace, So in the Italian family business in fashion, has always been very successful. And the same thing happened at that time with Nina Ricci and his son, Robert. So let's see something about her style. You see here, this is the style in the 30s. So as I was telling you, in the 30s, the fashion house grew very fast. And you can see here a picture that was an advertising of 1936, actually. And you see that she would shape ladies already figuring out what in the 40s would be. So, like the clepsydra shape, that would be very much on fashion. But she was also very much well known for her grande sobriété. So she was very sober in her style. She was never excessive, but it was also a fashion that stressed femininity. It was a fashion that stressed the fact that the lady wanted to be alluring. You see also, the fur color that this lady wears in the advertising. So that was actually her vision. Here always we have also this this fitted jacket that was very fashionable, but it was her introduced this kind of shape, which will be very much on facial later on in the 40s, not only at Nina Ricci, but generally speaking. You have to imagine that, as I told you, they had started in 1932 with one little room in Boulevard des Capucines. By the outbreak of the war, they already occupied 11th floor in 3 buildings. So you can imagine that the house of Nina Ricci had grown very much in a very short time, because the war, it was by 1939 already the outbreak, 1940 till 1945. So this was the period of time. So you see here in the 40s there is a new approach. We know that things are already changing because of the war. What you see that in 1940s, fashion was a good mix of comfort on one side and glamour by the other. You see in the picture, it was like the same hat in the advertising that they used for the previous one. Watch, you see, there's the same hat. So, you know, they would like suggest to reuse things from the previous year, of the previous couple of years, just, you know, to because of the war and things were like changing. As I was telling you, but besides, she was very feminine in her attitude. But during the war, what happened is that ladies had to sacrifice, of course, their way of dressing. You can imagine that. Also because there was a shortage of fabrics. Now, when we think of fashion and we think of those times, it's very, if you think of that, it's hard to imagine, you know, there was the war outside. How can possibly people think of dressing up? And this must make us think even of what happens nowadays. Because during the war, there was fashion. There was a certain kind of makeup. So what does it mean? It means that in spite of all the death that was around, life and the suggestions of life would be prominent. They would succeed. They would triumph. Okay, so this is something that we have to keep in mind. So fashion is just an expression of the times. It's not something that comes, you know, from another land. It's just an expression of the time, of the culture, of the society, of the sociology. So everything depends on also the state of mind of people around. And still, at that time, what do you know about the fashion in the 40s? Do you know anything? You haven't done the course yet, have you? You have studied my course, so you should know how in the 40s what was like the shapes. They were trying to bring back some kind of romance. They were trying to bring back something that was like lost in the outside. So there was like this clessidra shape for the ladies. Not all of them were that way. So there were like the padded shoulder that would suggest to have a short, a smaller waist, and you know, a round button, which was, of course, what in a period in which people start, not in the United States, of course, because they didn't have war on their territory, but nor in Australia, nor on that other place, but in Europe, people were very thin because they had nothing to eat. So what was on fashion? The curves. Because people were starving, and if you weren't starving, if you had curves, it means you were healthy, okay? You were safe. That's psychology, and that's what's behind fashion all the time. Ladies would wear red lipstick. Why? Why would they wear red lipstick at the time? Because it gives you a happy face. Look at me today. Do you know why I wear red lipstick today? Because I was extremely sad when I woke up. So I was sad, I felt blue, I felt I was like in pain, really. And my way to combat, if you want, this sadness was that of wearing red lipstick, because it gives you a happy face. And when you look at yourself having a happy face, you feel better. You look better, you feel better. This is psychology. It's not me, it's all of us. And this is the reason why fashion will always survive. because it's a matter of, it's a way we use to survive, to everything which is around us. It's our way to create, if you want, a parallel world in which we can be exactly who we want to be, very simply. And that's something that she understood better than anybody else. You know, she was not fashionable, if you want, like maybe Coco Chanel, because why? Why? Because she would suggest another kind of lady. Coco Chanel at the time would suggest a very free spirit, while she would have a ladylike attitude, a ladylike shape, a ladylike comfort. Okay, so at that time, the one who seemed to break the rules was Chanel and not Nina Ricci. But what I have learned from fashion and from life is that actually it is easier to be, of course, different, using a different kind of language. In that sense, the language used by Chanel was like a very masculine attitude that was like shocking for the time. It is much more difficult to go against the rules using the rules, like Nina Ricci would suggest. She was extremely independent. She was more independent than Chanel. You know why I say so? Because if you remember the history of Chanel, she will always have a man to pay for her business. While Nina Ricci, she did everything on her own. She started to work when she was 13 years old, and she made her money to launch her own business. She was the one who supported her son, not vice versa. Okay? So what I'm saying is that probably we don't look at these two ladies with the same eyes. And we think that maybe Chanel was much more, you know, a soldier of femininity in a different way. But when think it over, just try to read something about Nina Ricci more than that, and you will see that she was actually a very good example to follow. What happened in the 40s? Okay, after World War II, what do you think the world was looking for? Optimism, joy, reassuring times, reassuring promises, and that was for everyone. But somehow also, especially for ladies, especially for women, because you have to imagine that during the war, like exactly like it happened during World War I, women had to take the place of men in everything in society because they went to the front. So they were in the normal life, which was not normal, of course, but let's say in the daily life. And who were the ones who produced the munition that were used by the soldiers? Women. They were the ones that worked in the factories to produce the munition that were used by men at the front, because men were at the front, very simply. Okay, who were the one who ran the wartime factories? Women. You know, so you see, the role of women during the war, both first the World War I, World War II, was for the principle the same, but also gave to the ladies a very specific role in society that afterwards, of course, they would, let's try to say that they lost to be gained again. But after the war, the first thing that women wanted was to regain the former femininity. And you think it over, Dior, Christian Dior, do you remember? The dress that changed actually the shape of woman. It was like with this large, huge, large, round a skirt and small waist, and it was long again. While during the war, they had to have shorter skirts for several reasons. Why? First of all, yes, there was less fabric that could be used, and this is one thing. But also, ladies were going to work in the fabrics. They had to run. They didn't have the cars. They didn't have the buses like we know them. They had buses, you know, with horses. It was completely different. Think it over. Think what kind of world it was. So these ladies had to walk. They had to walk much faster. So shorter skirts, less femininity. No, of course, no decoration at all. Most of the things were like done with the same material that were produced the same clothes for the soldiers. You know, I mean, everything was not in color. Everything was, and also the smell. One thing that I remember that a person that I have known told me about the war is that there is a smell of war, which is the smell also of death. Today, wars are fought in a different way, but that time, you know, they were much closer to the enemy. So one thing that was extremely fashionable in the 40s were parfums. Why? Because people wanted to smell life, to smell good. And this is one thing that Nina Ricci with her son Robert understood. And they produced in 1945 the first parfum of the Maison, which was called Cœur Joli, which means beautiful heart. And these are two of the advertising with which this parfum was actually presented to the great public. But you have to imagine that one of the things that is still nowadays extremely well known and associated with Nina Ricci is this parfum, which is L'air du temps. L'air du temps, the translation is the spirit of the time. Okay, so it was produced, it came out in 1948, and here actually you see the second different kind of bottle in which the parfum was presented, because before that there was another one that I'm going to show you immediately. There is so much to say about this this parfum. Why there is so much to say? Because actually this parfum was, let me show you next. Okay. Okay, first of all, the bottle was designed by Jean Rebul. It was a very famous designer, and it was produced by Lalique, Marc Lalique. Do you know Lalique? It's a very high-end brand for crystals. Okay, Lalique made the first bottle you see here in 1948, but then they started to introduce this dove concept, you know, for the bottle. Anyway, why was this parfum so fashionable and so important? Well, at that time, you know that synthetic elements were already introduced in the parfum industry, so it was not considered a revolution. But at the same time, what happened with L'air du temps was revolutionary. Why? Because the idea of dosing in a massive way the benzyl salicylate, which is this synthetic product that was added to the parfum, was something unusual for the time. And this would give a very bright side to the bouquet. The bouquet was made with jasmine, rose, and gardenia, and they were spiced with peppery note of carnation. And this was a great innovation. And L'Air du Temps, actually, let's say that they started with the Air du Temps, a new era for the perfume industry. And it was completely different from all kind of perfume that were produced in the 30s that were so, let's say, heavy. This was not a very heavy perfume. It was scented in a different way. But you have also to imagine one thing. In the 40s, only married women were allowed to wear perfume. Single girls or like young girls, they were only allowed to wear eau de toilette, no parfum, no eau de parfum. Okay, because it wouldn't be so strong, it wouldn't last so much. Why? This was a parfum that was also worn by single people that were ladies that were not married yet. Okay, so you see in the 1951 La Ligue decided to introduce the Dove stopper, and this is for one reason, because 1951 war is over. So this is the atmosphere, the peaceful atmosphere after World War II. And also the spiral glass of this new design represents the sun. Okay, so this old battle has been thought to represent purity, peace, and love. Okay, and you can see here that over the years where there have been special edition flags for this kind of perfume, and you have to know that in 1999, this parfum, L'Air du Temps, was named the Parfum Battle of the Century. So this is considered to be the Parfum Battle of the 20th century, okay? You have also to imagine that there are plenty of parfums that we know nowadays very few. This is something that you can find nowadays. I mean, if you want, you can buy it because it's still it is still sold in the shops. But there are plenty of perfume that followed these steps. Like, for example, Charlie Anaïs de Cacharel. I don't know if you know this perfume. Vie Privée, the Yves Roche, Volupté by Oscar de la Renta, and also very recently, Femme by Bulgari. So all these parfums are scented after the Nina Ricci L'Air du Temps. What happened is that in 1954, Robert Ricci decided that it was about time for his mother to retire from the haute couture. So with a very nice coup de grâce, as the French would say, he introduced this designer, Jean-François Craillat, who is Belgian, and he was the one that took the hat and the helm of the haute couture sector. But you have to imagine something. Also, this gentleman, who was like pretty much close to the way of feeling of Nina Ricci, he designed. You see this outfit that is published here in the picture. This is called the crocus suit, and this became a must-have. It was launched in 1959, and it was haute couture, and they received 100 the amounts of women that wanted this suit. And this also became a very famous part of the pret-à-porter collection afterwards. Okay, have you ever heard the name of Carrie Donovan? Carrie Donovan was a very famous American fashion editor for Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, but also New York Times magazine. And um, she would write this, like, what has brought the house out of a semi-anonymity was a collection that was feminine in the extreme, beautiful coloring and fabric, and bizarre and elegant. Under Christ's design direction, the house took a stand from the plain gap-through, the day suits, and the knockout and bachelorly luxurious evening gown. The house went on to develop the Mademoiselle Ricci line, which was the pret-à-porter line, which was actually not really pret-à-porter, but what I would suggest to call demi-couture, because it was like not really ready to wear, and it was not really pret-à-porter. It was demi-couture. I mean, still made like a couturier, but still more affordable and easier to gain. After what happened is that in 1963, Caray left Nina Ricci to join Lanvin, and he was replaced by Gérard Pipard. He was a French designer, and he is probably the house until the year 2000. I mean, until the almost the new millennium, the house had only three until 1994. Three designers. One was Nina Ricci herself. The other one was Caray, and the third and last was Pipard. And so Pipard had been working before with Balmain and with Givenchy. So you see big names, and he really, let's say, incarnate, if you want, the style and also the soul of Nina Ricci in the best way. You have to imagine that in he was with the house with Nina Ricci for 35 years. And he died in 2013, I think. So, but for 35 years, he has been with Nina Ricci. And he has been dressing the Queen of Thailand. She used to dress Nina Ricci and Balestra, two Italians. So she, the Queen of Norway, the Josephine Charlotte de Luxembourg. I mean, plenty of royals would wear Nina Ricci under the helm of Pipard. Why under the helm of Pipard? Because in 1970, when I was born, Nina Ricci died. And so Robert continued with Gérard Pipard his path towards success. You have also to imagine in the late 1970s, so by the end of the 70s, at the beginning almost of the 80s, the sunglasses department of Nina Ricci were grossing $6 million per year. A lot of money. We are at the end of this path. In 1994, this group was amazingly big. It was present in 130 countries, and it had more than 100 pret-à-porter lines. And what happened is that the reason is because the son-in-law of Robert Ricci, whose name was Gilles Fouchon, and he was the heir of a parfum family. He had introduced new fresh money in the company and made it grow. Also because the 75% of the income was made by parfum. So you imagine how important that department had been. In the year 2000, Robert Ricci was no longer alive, and his son-in-law decided to sell the company to a Spanish group. So in 2000, it was sold to Antonio Puig, and the Puig company is specialized in cosmetics. But as I told you, 75% of their turnover was made by parfum, so it was like normal. And also in 2002, we have the debut of Nathalie Gervais and Massimo Giussani as designer of the company. But the most important times probably where we are until the 2009, he was like followed by the British designer who was like the right hand of Marc Jacobs, who was Peter Copping. And this lasted until like the 2018. What happened is that nowadays, where are we? Where do we stand? We stand that Nina Ricci is still owned by the group Puig, and in 2018, the company has decided to give the art direction to Rashmi Botter and Lizzie Halbert. They are a duo, and Dutch duo, and they are the founder of the men's brand Botter. And nowadays, they still the designers of the brand. Oops, I'm sorry. Here you see this one that you see here is a picture of the last collection, the one of spring summer 2021. What can I tell you about this? Well, actually, in these times, which are so hard, like those that they have lived during the war, these two creative directors have decided to go back to the roots of the house. They have decided to, let's see, go through the designs of Rina Ricci, and they understood one thing. There was one thing that was like always present in all the creation that she made during all of her life: optimism. And this is what I wanted to bring with the Spring Summer 2021 collection, a message of hope and optimism for the future. So if you go and see, you can find it online. You will see the colors, the shape, they really come back from the archive of the Maison, but still with this optimistic view, which was typical of Miss Nina Ricci. Okay, I'm very happy that we have the opportunity to talk about this lady, and I'm very happy because you didn't know anything about her. So thank you for having been with me. I'm sorry for last week. I had really a big issue to solve. I'll see you next week, and we will start with the second part. So no longer talking about, unfortunately, no longer talking about designers, but seeing another part of our actually path together. Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, girls.
Thank you.
Have a great week. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Ciao.
Grazie, ciao.
Ciao.